Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your proclamation designating this month as Sex Trafficking Awareness and Action Month is not viewed as merely ceremonial to those of us who are advocates. By the way, my name is Joy Tuscherer, and I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We expect you and this council to take specific and meaningful action. Mr. Mayor, I was disheartened when you revised my original proclamation, deleting a pledge that calls upon you to utilize this city's abundant resources to help end this crime. Without funding, there can be no solution. As you and the council prepare to deliberate another avenue for the tax revenue collected from the city's hotels and motels, let me suggest an allocation to one of the numerous organizations represented here tonight that are in desperate need of funding to counteract just a percentage of the dollars spent by the Convention and Visitors Bureau to bring consumers here. A few cents on the dollar can make a real difference here, Mr. Mayor. Former councilman and member of your ad hoc committee, Jim Entenman, is quoted as saying, "Every little person out there has a great idea about the next best thing for this community." Well, look no further. There can be no argument that the majority of sex trafficking takes place in hotel rooms. Crimes perpetrated by the very men this community lures here by the hundreds of thousands every year. It should also not surprise you that concerts and sporting events held in this community also attract perpetrators. I acknowledge the majority of men who come here are not criminals of this nature. Those that are contribute to the following statistics. According to the FBI, the trafficking in human beings is the second largest and fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, generating an approximate $32 billion a year while enslaving an estimated 27 million people. Within the scope of human trafficking, sex trafficking, as the fastest growing criminal enterprise, needs this consideration. There are more slaves today than at any other time in human history. Horrifically, the perpetrators of sex trafficking are not looking for women anymore, they're looking for children. With the average age of a child being trafficked for sex in Sioux Falls being 13, once established in this slavery, their lifespan is now 7 years. Women, children, and men who are trafficked are regularly beaten, gang raped, branded, denied access to their children and to food, forced to live in deplorable spaces, coerced into drug addiction, and forced to endure the most repugnant acts imaginable multiple times a day. No wonder they only live for 7 years. Someone referred to as a prostitute should be viewed as a victim. When asked what they want to be when they grow up, no child ever raises their hand and says, "I want to be a prostitute." The image portrayed in the movie Pretty Woman is pure Hollywood fantasy. When a 24-year-old woman has been arrested for prostitution, know that she's probably come from a background of abuse and neglect, has been trafficked years, and that 7-year clock is ticking. There are people rising up to combat this crisis of humanity here in Sioux Falls, but combat requires more than a proclamation. It requires money and a mayor and a council that recognizes their obligations to protect and defend all of the citizens of this community. This can be a moment in time for you, a time of revelation when you recognize the funding requirements needed to govern all of this city's inhabitants. Sex trafficking is a crisis in this country, Mr. Mayor. It's a crisis in this state, and it's an epidemic in the city of Sioux Falls. It commands your immediate attention. If you, Mayor Uther, want something, you have demonstrated time and again how your years of well-cultivated business and political relationships, your acumen for accessing private and governmental funding, working under the privilege of your elected power, and your passionate enthusiasm coalesce to accomplish any goal. As you close out your mayoral term, I implore you to leave a legacy of positive, influential leadership on this issue. I will help you. Your consideration of my perspective and your attention empowers me. God bless every veteran who ever served for my right to stand here and speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak to the council on any topic? Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Heth, and I am with Wichoni Wawukia, which is Helping Families Incorporated. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been in existence for over 30 years. I believe each one of you have a packet. It gives some background information on Wichoni. Also, one of the new initiatives that we've undertaken is it's called Pathfinder Center, and what it is, it's a place of refuge. It's helping victims of human trafficking, protecting and finding purpose for victims of human trafficking. We are in September 30th, we were awarded a $750,000 grant from the Department of Justice to provide services to victims of human trafficking. It is a 3-year grant, also with a 25% in kind over the 3 years. Right now, we're at the process of, Wichoni undertook, we took out a loan to purchase a motel. It's 29 room. Currently, we are renovating 14 rooms for victims of human trafficking. What we plan on doing is providing services for victims of human trafficking, helping women to become self-sufficient, help to teach them about life skills, help them to heal, to be able to just undo those layers and layers of traumas that they have been through. One of the things is we know that human trafficking affects all walks of life. And it's not just here in Sioux Falls, but throughout the state of South Dakota. And one of the things that we are seeing is 40% of those that have been affected by it are Native American. Some of them are coming from the reservations. And just recently, we had a situation where a young mother was lured. She is a mother of 3. She was lured by a friend who is also a mother of 2, who lured her here to Sioux Falls, and under pretense of, excuse me, I got to grab my water. So this young mother was lured by this other mother, asking her to bring her here to Sioux Falls, and if she would drive her here, bring her here to Sioux Falls, and that she would make it worth her while, and provide her with some money to buy gifts and for Christmas and whatnot. And so she did bring her to Sioux Falls. And what she didn't tell her how she was gonna get the money was through trafficking, being sex trafficked. Luckily for this young woman, she was able to get away from the situation, call the law enforcement, which come and picked her up, took her to a shelter. She waited there for her mother to come and pick her up, and she called us the next day. She couldn't remember where her car was at the home, because when they got there, they went into another vehicle to another location. And she wasn't really familiar with Sioux Falls. Luckily for this young woman, that she was able to escape from anything happening to her. So we have a lot of our a lot of our young women on the reservation that are being lured into cities, Sioux Falls, different places, Minneapolis, and under the pretense of other situations of because of the poverty, come earn money, come be a model, this, that, through Facebook, social media. So it affects every all of us in South Dakota. It could be any one of our daughters or their sisters, nieces. So it affects all walks of life. So one of the other, also Wichoni, is Mitamashke Tiki, which is my sister friend's house, which is here in Sioux Falls. They are under Wichoni Wawokia. And so Pathfinder Center is not currently, like I said, we're getting it renovated, and people or organizations, churches, First Lutheran Church is sponsoring 3 rooms, is going to come in and make the rooms into, so they don't look like a motel room, and where it looks something different, where it's something cozy and comfy. And already we've got like 4 rooms that have been put into place. One of the things is, and I do support what Joy has talked about, is funding, and that, you know, in the last year, I know Mitamashke Tiki Shelter has provided services to 14 victims of human trafficking here in Sioux Falls and put them in shelter and that. So one of the things about Pathfinder is that we are planning on serving.
Lisa, I'm going to have to ask you to you're at 6:04.
Okay.
Council, I hope you understand, but she came from out of town, so if you could wrap it up, we'd appreciate
Okay,
it.
sure. Just one more minute. So, so I support what Joy says, and as far as Mitamashke Tiki is a big part of the city in providing services not only to domestic violence, sexual assault, but human trafficking victims, and I support the initiative of what Joy talked about, and for funding for those people who are providing services to victims of human trafficking. We thank you for any support that you would give to Pathfinder and Mitamashke Tiki and other service providers that are providing services to victims of human trafficking. Thank you.
Lisa, thanks for coming into town, too. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Dawn Steinberg. I'm with the Junior League of Sioux Falls, and we would like to thank you for your proclamation. The Junior League has been in Sioux Falls for 37 years. If you don't know, we're a women's organization. We have started several projects in Sioux Falls, including the very first one that we did was the Ronald McDonald House, and then we helped with the next 2. We started the Vera Race Against Breast Cancer, CASA. We help with Child's Voice, and so we have several other ones as well. Our current initiative is human trafficking. We appreciate your proclamation. We hope that you will consider funding dollars in the future to help these victims. We hope that you will learn more about what is human trafficking. It's a very long process for these victims to recover. It's not your typical recovery time of a couple counseling sessions. It can take up to several years. So we would appreciate any funding dollars that you can give the city of Sioux Falls to help with that initiative. Thanks for your time. I know you've got a full agenda.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome, Mr. Come forward, sir.
Bob. Robert Kolbe, citizen. Question, is the system down, or do you normally just show the picture of the edifice here? So in other words, the average citizen can't see what the public is saying?
Oh, no. On TV,
Okay,
it's not that.
because it just looks like from the audience like there was, the system had expired. I'm here to invite you to the 21st of January, 7 o'clock presentation at the Historical Society. And I'm going to start my time. They're going to be presenting the 2 explosions of the Powder House, one being given by Steve Wheeling, who was the grandnephew of one of the people who was killed in the first Powder House explosion, and the second one is done by Ron Robinson, an Augustana faculty person, author, playwright, etc. I think you will find it interesting, very much so. Now, I know that each of you put in a lot of time, and I'm grateful for that, but sometimes at time you need to have a little reprise of what things that you might wish to take a look at for the coming year. Because you are elected, that does not mean that an elected official can challenge the Encyclopedia Britannica. When someone knows more than you on any subject, listen to them. Nothing is more trite than to say or act, "I was elected and you weren't." Your duty is to correct the errors of the past while doing that which is for our best interest in the future. You represent those who like you, those who support you, those who don't care about government, and those who would rattle your cage. The only politics worth a damn is compromise. When dealing with any subject, determine, is this a self-interest or is this for the best interest? Don't be afraid to differentiate between needs and wants. Be honest with your constituents, and most importantly, be honest with yourself. Do your job to the best of your ability. Be nice without being a phony. Sitting behind the bench, and I've had the opportunity, doesn't make you better than those on this side. It only signifies that you have been entrusted with different responsibility. If you have an opportunity to select people to serve on committees, don't appoint friends and relatives. Appoint those who care about the subject at hand, even if they don't agree with you. You'll be more like Lincoln, whose cabinet member, one of them, was running for president while he was on Lincoln's cabinet and running against Lincoln. The world will continue without you. May your nemesis be able to say you were reasonable and fair. There will be a test. It's called election. For myself, being a has-been allows you to offer experienced criticism, and I hope you have a great and successful 2016.
Ms. Kolbe, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Mayor, council members, I'm going to say this in one time and one time only. I know there's a lot of advocates on human trafficking, prostitution, and pimping.
First, you have to just introduce yourself to the
Yeah,
people.
around Sioux Falls.
Thank you.
But every prostitute is a victim, but they're not going to be immune from jail time. There are prostitutes out here that are pimping on and are prostituting on their own terms and do not have a pimp. We can stop this by doing something about this hotel and this motel living. This is where it starts from. If we keep letting this all continue in these motels and these hotels, you're going to have more problems. You're going to have homicides, more victims of crime. I have not seen a child trafficking sex crime here yet, but I've seen women and men prostituting in these hotels. It's not a sting operation where they go and they meet these people at a hotel. These people are actually in these hotels, renting these rooms for sexual favors. If these hotels and motels were trained on these issues and cooperate with law enforcement like they should, we shouldn't be having all these arrests in these hotels and these motels here. So these advocates, I praise them for what they're doing, but we can't just let all people, prostitutes, say, oh, you're a victim of a crime, we're not going to put you to jail. That just can't happen. There are some people that deserve the jailhouse here, okay? We have some hardcore prostitutes that just do it just to do it because it's fast and easy money. Domestic abuse is on the rise here, okay? We have landlords that are given 3-day notices when people are calling the police and putting their abusers in the jailhouse. I called the fair housing, and I guess they don't know the law because they say that they can evict on domestics. It depends on the situation. Landlords are not required by law to evict tenants for police calls for health and safety reasons or when police activity or arrests occur because of being a victim of domestic abuse. Evicting due to police calls could be gender discrimination because women or men in a domestic violence situation could be a primary source of police contact in these situations. If a victim feels she or he will be evicted for reporting domestic abuse, she is more likely to keep the abuse or he and not seek assistance. Right now, I have dealt with 5 domestic people that have called the police one time and will not call again because they're putting this fake, bogus 3-day notices on people's doors, and they're scared to call the police. And one incident happened on Thanksgiving Day, right by Cleveland Street, and he beat the living hell out of her. She was so scared, she called the police. She was so used to it, she would put a spoon on her face to do the swelling down. She called the police the first time he was on parole. He went to jail. And the next day, she's calling me crying because the landlord put a 3-day notice on her. So landlords are victimizing these victims here. What is going on with this? When you're a landlord, as a community activist, what I say and what I do, I have a lawyer, I have to do everything according by law. Why don't these landlords go according by law and stop doing this in the city? Next week, if we do not come to a compromise with these landlords, I will publicly announce who's doing this, and we got to stop this. Another issue is licensing on alcohol and liquor at ballrooms. I understand that y'all do not look at all of the fights that are happening and the police calls, but let me tell you this. Riley's Tavern has gotten sued more than once on excessive force and fighting in there, and there's 2 off-duty police officers that work in there. Sioux Falls Inn was 1 call per day for 365 days of the year. Wiley's Sports Bar and Grill is not far behind it. On the weekends, you go and you pass, and they're sitting there fighting on the outside and stopping traffic in the front there. I don't know if y'all could change the policy or the law on when to renew liquor licenses, but I think that if there's too many calls for fights out there, they need to get their license pulled or suspended. He has enough security in there to stop the problems before a fight happens and they're pulling and having a cat fight outside in the front of Wiley's Sports Bar and Grill. We are having very much tension with the discrimination there. We're fixing a protest there as of in February after there is a criminal case that is ongoing. When that criminal case is finished, I will come out to what happened in Wiley's. I have done talk to the owners. We have done try to put stuff into place for them to stop discriminating due to dress code. We have issues arising on top of issues there, and I'm seeing all these police calls. How many police calls were there? I think it was 5 to 7 police calls as of this year for fights. So does our taxes want to keep paying for this? For the fights? We already have the motel stuff going on. Now we have the fights at the bar, Mayor. And I understand that I'm over time here. But if you could just soak this information in, please, and let's try to do better for the city. But having fights outside and hair pulling, stopping traffic is not the answer here.
Sierra, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Folks, is there anybody else who want to engage the council? Welcome.
My name is David Zokaites. I live here in Sioux Falls, of course, coming to Sioux Falls City Council. My place is a little north of Falls Park, and I'm here to talk about civil rights. Now, I happen to think that civil rights are really important. I mean, why live in America if you don't value your civil rights? But not everybody shares my opinion, and some people have gotten rather cynical and complacent and buried their heads in the sand and not seeing what's right in front of them. Well, I see things in front of me, and I'd like to bring some of them to your attention. Hopefully we'll be able to make a few changes. But first I want to read, I only have 5 minutes tonight, so I can't address all the world's problems, and I've got this letter I'm working on, the captain on the police force, and I'm only going to read the first half of it today because it's a long letter. So here we go. Greetings, Captain Mark Jensen. A couple of years ago, I briefly observed a group of police officers in the Lewis Drug parking lot here in Sioux Falls. Little activity was occurring, but, I decided to watch for a few minutes out of curiosity. I was standing still, about 50 feet away from the officers, when one of them approached me. He threatened to arrest me for supposedly interfering with his work merely by watching unobtrusively. He commanded me to get so far away that he wouldn't even be able to see me. After this incident, I filed a complaint which you handled. You resolved my complaint by excusing the officer's threat, claiming that he was just doing his job. Since that time, I've come across various court rulings which state that citizens have the right to videotape police without seeking permission. Here, for example, is a 2005 ruling taken from policeone.com. In Robinson versus Fetterman, the court ruled that there is a free speech right to film police officers in the performance of their public duties. We should carefully consider the impact of this ruling. Because I have the right to record police, the officer who threatened me was interfering with my civil rights. Violation of civil rights is a crime. This court ruling further implies that you were obstructing justice when you excused this officer's actions. Obstruction of justice is also a crime. It's a fairly serious crime, but it's only a crime if anyone ever cares to prosecute. There's quite a story behind that last sentence, but I'll leave that saga for another time. Last summer, I walked up to Officer Dalton, I think that was his name, and told him the U.S. District Court has ruled that I have the right to record police activities. He told me that I could take the U.S. District Court and my cell phone and get 200 yards away from him. His partner, in complete denial, was an accomplice to Officer Dalton's crime. He kept repeating, it's a matter of perspective. If we connect these three events, it appears that the Sioux Falls Police Department has a systemic disregard for civil rights. We should ask ourselves why so many police officers like to perform public activities without being recorded. Do police attack suspects? Somebody has gone and asked that question. Do they plant evidence? Do they desire to maintain dominance? Are they merely shy or suspicious? Whatever the reason, when police anywhere insist on secrecy, the people should be alarmed. So anyway, U.S. District Court rules we have this right. What good is that right if you can't exercise it? I think we need to make some changes. But that's all I have for tonight because it's 5 minutes.
David, appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
I'll make it short and sweet. Tim Stanga. When we do a snow alert in town, I've had a lot of people ask me, when we ticket cars, what part of the snow alert do we ticket cars? Is it when you say snow alert, you gotta have the off the street right away? Because I had a couple people in my neighborhood cleaning their driveways out. They put their cars out in the street, cleaning the driveways out, and then there was a cop there putting a ticket on their vehicle. And they went out and explained it to the police officer what they were doing. He ripped the ticket up, but I mean, they just gotta figure out on when we do a snow alert, when do we give tickets out? And when do people have to be, I don't know, I guess ready? Because I guess in my neighborhood, you can go around the neighborhood and there's cars that have snow around them that they've already went around and they can sit for 5 or 6 days and there's no tickets on them at all. So I guess a lot of people like that explained. Another thing that I've realized that when we do a liquor sting and we bring the companies up here that have to come up and you guys ask them the same questions over and over and over and they give you the same answers over and over. I'm just curious on if the city has tried to sit down with try to get all these businesses together to figure out what businesses are doing what businesses are doing something, and trying to figure out if they can get a happy medium. I'm trying to figure out what's working for somebody, maybe it'll work for somebody else. Just a suggestion, because I talked to a few of them back here the other day, and they just said, you know, we gotta throw our hands up, and our business is pretty much in your guys' hands. On, you know, who they hire, who they trust, who they can't trust. And then another thing, 9 times out of 10, when a home is robbed, it's done through the garage. And I'm just curious on, if we were looking at a ordinance on sheetrocking the bottom of the floors of the basements, can we look at maybe looking at an ordinance where you have to have a deadbolt on the garage service door? Because I can guarantee that if you don't have a deadbolt on your garage service door, call me up, I'll be in there in 15 seconds. Because it can be done. Credit card, you can be in there in 15 seconds. So I just wanted you to just ponder that one, to where 9 times out of 10, that's where they go in at. If they see a deadbolt, they're gonna sort of walk away, and it'll alleviate what the police officers have to do, and see if we can get something done.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council?
It's been a long night. Bruce Danielson, Sioux Falls. I just wanted to talk to you about a little something that was brought to my attention the other day, since we've been talking about the construction manager at risk. We continue to ask questions about the CMR process and the building of the civic structures. We have reservations about many of the design and construction concepts being used in recent years, so it comes as no great surprise to hear from the indoor pool project after they had given a tour of the building to administration officials. This tour group decided that the lobby is not large enough, according to these sources. Options discussed is removal of the concession stand, limit the warming patrons, remove walls, or just blow out the masonry walls and make it bigger make the lobby bigger. And what's disturbing about this is during the one evening dog and pony show at the Iwati Center last year, members of the public said it didn't meet the promises made during the illegal pre-election advocational education sessions. So once again, we're looking at spending more millions on this short-sighted pool plan. So I just wanted to let the council know, according to my sources, for you to get ready for another secret change order caused by this poorly conceived idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danson. Appreciate that.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.